boy, does it feel any faster. Hello guys, and welcome back to the VOLKSWIZARD channel. Today we're going to make a modification to my Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport. We're going to ditch the original factory airbox and paper air filter and fit in their place a Racingline R600 intake system. These have been around for many years. They're proven very popular with Golf 7, 7.5 GTI and R owners, and that's because they're proven to make more power and torque, particularly when combined with a remap. It's still worth fitting them though to an otherwise unmodified engine, and that's because they will still produce a little bit more power and torque. They make a really good sound with a bit of an induction roar. And finally, when I drove this car on track in July on a very hot day, you could feel it was down on power. Having an R600 should minimise those losses. Now, the Golf 8 is based on the Mk8 EVO platform, and because it's slightly different, Racingline have had to modify the R600 to fit perfectly. They could have just left the original moulding for this car, but things would have rubbed against it and it just wouldn't have been as OEM standard as they normally like. So they've modified it slightly underneath and on the upper lid. And this is now called the R600 EVO. So it's pretty much like the normal R600. So if you've got a 7.5 and you still want to see the fitting instructions, it shouldn't be massively different to this. So let's get fitting the Racingline R600 EVO. Okay, let's have a look in the box then and see what you get for your money. So this is the lid for the R600. The whole system is made from the same plastic as the factory airbox, and it's very good at insulating heat. So even though it does run through a very hot part of the engine, the heat really shouldn't get to the air that's flowing through this to the intake pipe. That's pretty good. It's pretty heavy, feels good quality. It's not flexible. It's got a high quality badge on there with a protective foil over it right now. It's a Racingline. It's actually made in England, handmade in England, according to the box, which is quite a rare thing. This is a foam overstock, we'll talk about in a sec, and this is the base of the R600. So roughly here is where your normal airbox starts, and you can see where the air comes in just above the radiator. Now this is the important bit. You get a choice of two different air filters. You can have foam, which you have to clean periodically, or you can have cotton, which lasts longer, but you have to kind of throw it away when you finish with it, because they don't really clean that well. What they've started offering now is a foam overstock. So you put this over the pleated cotton filter, and then this picks up the dirt, and then you can wash this in your washing machine and put it straight back on. You don't even need to oil it. These cars don't run air mass meters, so you don't have the problem of the olden days where the oil would kill the MAF. But even so, you don't need to oil it. You just take it off every few minutes, chuck it in your washing machine, put it back on, and you're good to go. And that means your cotton air filter, which doesn't clean very well, remains brand new. So this is probably money well spent at £23.50. A box of screws here and some rubber bungs that go in the bottom of the R600, so they fit onto the sort of mounting points of the original airbox. Okay, let's start ripping out the original parts. Okay, the good news is you do not need a lot of tools to do this job. You need a T25 Torx driver to undo the factory screws. You need a T20 Torx driver to tighten up the Racingline screws. Ideally, you should have some hose, clamp, pliers to undo the intake pipe off the airbox, because it's got one of those annoying clamps, but you can probably make do with some normal pliers. But these are brilliant because A, they don't slip off, and B, you can lock them in place like that, and then just slide this off the back of the pipe, leave it kind of resting on the turbo. Come back to that when you finish the job. If you just use normal pliers, you have to kind of clamp it onto something. It's quite easy to damage these plastic intake pipes. With those, you can do this job without leaving a mark. Right, we can pull this pipe off there. There's a little vacuum pipe on the side we just pull off. That was suspiciously loose, wasn't it? But I had loosened it earlier. But yeah, just give it a good tug. Try not to break it off the airbox, because that can happen. So be kind of gentle but firm. And then some people take the airbox out complete, but I don't really think that's going to be very easy on this one, maybe because it's different to a Mark 7 7.5. So it's much easier, even though it's a bit more time consuming, to take the lid off the airbox. That involves doing all about 8 little screws. Okay, that's off. How many screws were there? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. And the paper air filter, so 11,000 miles. How does it look? Yeah, not bad, but that's because I just do a lot of boring miles on motorways. Okay, this is the base of the airbox. Now, you can try and pull it up, but I think you're going to hit this bit where the air goes into the airbox. So I would now start undoing this. So pull the coolant pipe off from its little mounting points, and then T25 again, undo one screw there. They're all captive, by the way, so they don't come out, which is great. And that takes the lid off this bit. That's it. Make a note of your oil, 504 50700, because this is not going to be on your car any longer. And now we have this lower intake duct at the front of the car. And we've got 2 T25s on either end of it, which we are going to reuse, so keep those safe. Okay, I'll put those just there. Alright, now you push this down to release it, but there is a section in here you can take out separately, which makes life easier. So this duct has got this bit on the back of it where it joins the airbox that can come off separately, which makes your life easier. Just to pull it, just unclip it from there, so you push down the tab, push that backwards, and then it's sort of clipped in to the main duct just there. Just watch the coolant hose. And with that out, you can now see the bit of the airbox. If you try pulling the airbox out without removing this, you're just going to break something. So that's worth the effort taking that off now. Okay, so the airbox is free, so we'll just get that out. The beauty of having the lid off is that you can put your thumbs in and really feel your way around this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, one you can't see fixings. So basically they are rubber hoops that push onto prongs coming out of the chassis leg. So just take a good tug like that and like that. And there we have the base of the airbox. Now on here is a drainage tube, presumably if you get water build up in your airbox, and it's important to take a note of which way around where that sits. So basically it comes out just over, just in from the edge of the box. So we need to fit that to the R600 as well. It comes off, just press that together where you've got the raised bits on it, and then just pull it off. Be gentle though, because they are a bit fragile. And that's all the old bits out, apart from the front scoop. That's actually quite easy. So yeah, once you've pushed it down to dislodge it and got that scoop out, that is out. So that's it. Right, now let's get fitting the new bits. Okay, so let's start off then with the base. I've put the rubber grommets in, I put them that way round, so you've got the wider hole there ready to receive the dowels that are sitting by the battery. There are 2 of those, one there, one there. That middle one is the hole for the drainage tube. But we're going to put that on afterwards, which seems counterintuitive because it's going to be fiddly, but you really can't get this in position with this sticking out the bottom of it. So let me demonstrate. So the only way to do it really is to start with the thin end and slot it under this coolant pipe. Now, this coolant pipe is very much in the way and it's very fragile. There's a very thin connection on the top hose for the radiator, and you could, I'm sure, damage it very easily by forcing the base into position. So you really need to be really careful. So just take a step back, take a deep breath, and just think carefully about what you're doing and just keeping an eye on the tension on this coolant hose. It's rubber, so there's a bit of elasticity to it, but not a lot. So you need to get the base, the front of the base on top of the radiator, and then it's got about 1 inch higher where it needs to sit. You've got cables for the bonnet here as well you need to be mindful of as well. So now that's under tension, well, a bit. So we need to pull the base up, try and push the back down a bit, and then let's go back a bit. down a bit more. No. Okay, that's over the bonnet cables, and now the base is sort of in position. Okay. Right, don't forget your drainage tube. A bit of lube would probably help. It's got a rubber O-ring there which sits inside the tube that's on the airbox. So let's just lube that up and slot it into place. Okay, you just have to put a lot of pressure on it as much as you can. So I'm pushing against it in the airbox and then just try and twist it into position. That is it. Okay. So next up, we need to see the locating pins through the grommets. Let's just put some lube on there as well. Just keep an eye on how this sits at the front. So slightly over to the left a bit. There's a big thick wiring loom here. Just need to push it out the way ever so slightly so we get the airbox in the right position. Now you can see the dowel sticking through the grommets. That's a nice sight. Let's have a look at the front now. So this isn't in position. So the R600 slots into a slot that is under the slats. So if you're pushing against it, you're too far back. Once it slots in, these holes for the torque screws line up with the bigger hole, the square hole on the radiator support panel. So that is in position, they're lined up. That can't be wrong. So we're doing okay. Okay, now the air filter. As you can see, I've put the foam oversock over it. It took a bit of a stretch, but it's, yeah, covering it quite thoroughly. Don't forget to connect the vacuum hose you took off very early on in the dismantling process just there. So that's going to be on the outside of the R600 box. So we might as well connect this to the intake hose. That's good. There's a pretty decent slot where the air filter sits in the body, so you'll know when you're in there. Yep, that's good. Okay, vacuum now. That should just stretch around there. Okay, yeah, it's a bit tight. There are a couple of bits of vacuum hose in the kit if you're not happy with that. So I'm not sure if they're designed to relieve the tension on there. Oh no, it just pulls off. Okay, we'll pull that off. And this bit is quite a bit longer, so have a look at that. So it hasn't got the kink in it, but I don't think it needs it, so let's just push that on there. Oh yeah, that goes on. Well, oh yes, okay. Okay, that's a proper job then. Let's now get the cover on. So again, stick the narrow bit under the coolant hose. Okay, that's lined up really nicely. Let's start putting the screws back in. So we're going to go 25 for the original two screws we're reusing, which are right here. These hold the base of the scoop to the slam panel. Okay, onto the T20 now, get this pack of screws. Okay, a little tip when you're screwing together the top and bottom half of the R600 is to make sure you don't leave any gap between them. That might sound really obvious, but because you're cutting new threads into the top and bottom halves when you put the screw in for the first time, it's quite easy for there to be a gap left, yet you can't tighten the screw anymore. It's really easy to fix though. Just wind the screw out so it's no longer in the lower section and then tighten it up again. You'll find it actually goes together a lot more easily then as well. That was pretty much applicable to every screw on here, and without doing that it looked really like bad fitting and it wouldn't have been very good at containing the air within it because the gaps were quite large. So one thing to watch. Right, just 3 things left to do now. Firstly, we need to put the hose clamp back on the inlet pipe. Like so. We need to take the protective foil off the Racingline badge, and of course we now need to go for a test drive. Okay, here we are driving my Mk8 Golf GTI Clubsport with the Racingline R600 EVO induction system, and just pottering along now at about 30 in 30. It doesn't make any more noise than standard. You can fit some sort of cone filter to your car that makes a lot more noise even just at idle, but that's because they're open in the engine bay. They're not inside a well insulated box like the R600, and that's great for noise, but it's not very good for performance because they're taking in hot air from the engine bay, and that's totally the opposite of what the R600 is trying to achieve. So I guess it's not surprising it's not massively louder than standard, because loudness would mean that the intake was exposed to the atmosphere, which it isn't. But we'll get on a faster road now and see if we can hear anything. We're in comfort mode, which is the mode after sport. Sport makes a lot of banging, so it's probably not the best one for trying to listen to the induction. So I've already done about 70 miles in the car, so I've got a feel for the noise, and to be honest, it's not night and day difference. So I think if you apply a lot of throttle in a high gear at low revs, you can hear some of the turbo gases which you couldn't hear before. A bit like if you've ever driven a Mark IV Golf, they're quite audible on those. And maybe there's a tiny little noise of it dumping ever so subtly, but it is definitely not night and day different, and it wouldn't really give you a headache on a longer journey, because you don't actually notice anything when you're on the motorway. It's really when you're only sort of over halfway down the throttle. So I guess you could say that's good, because too loud would kind of mean I'd have to rip it off straight away. That's fine, but the real reason I bought it was to counter the effects of heat. Now today it's 8 degrees, it's damp, it's perfect turbo weather, but in the summer when the air's thinner and the temperature is over 20, that's when the R600 would really come into its own. But it's primarily designed to be used with remapped cars. MRC Tuning, the very highly respected tuner of Banbury, highly recommend the R600, and that's from lots of dyno testing. So if you put it on a standard car, you're not getting its full effect, but it's still nice to have. Is it a bit more responsive? I'd say possibly marginally sharper. The air filter's surface area is, I think, over twice as big as a standard one, so that's not an unreasonable claim. Does it feel any faster? I'm not going to claim that, but I think we need to go back to Racingline at some point and see if this car will produce more than the 316 brake horsepower that it recorded back in September, so well over standard with the standard airbox. Now before I sign off, I just want to remind you guys to purchase, if you haven't already, the VOLKSWIZARD 2022 calendar. If you have already bought one, big thanks. I don't ask for an awful lot of money from you guys to buy stuff. I just feel you're watching the videos is all I could ever want, really. But we do this every year. It's a bit of a tradition. It barely is any more than what it costs us to do it, and we've got only a few left now, so it's definitely going to sell out this year. I think if you look on eBay, there's less than 15. So if you want one, get on there, get it. The link will be in the description of the video. And today is the 28th of December, so the post starts again on the 29th. Quite possible, if you're in the UK at least, we can get it to you before the 1st of January, so it'll be ready for action on the big day. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this VOLKSWIZARD video. If you've enjoyed it, as ever, please give it a thumbs up, please do comment, please do share, please do subscribe. That's free, you don't have to pay any money for that, but that does mean a lot to the channel as well. And click the notification icon while you're at it, and I'll see you for the next video very soon.